Paul Rivera Jr. from Rivera Amplifiers, and we're lucky enough to have Will Ray demonstrate the Venus 6. So Will, what's important to you in an amplifier?
Well, for me, I like an amp that just right out of the box has the tone. I like to be able to take an amp out of the box, you know, put the controls in a kind of a medium kind of position and strum a chord, and I want to be able to hear it loud and clear and but with a little edge to it. What I like about Rivera amps is they have a punch to them that I don't get in most other amps, and that's what I look for, is punchiness, because when you have that punchiness, then even when you're using distortion, it's going to punch through. If you're playing with another guitar player, it's going to punch through more and not get part of the background noise.
So you want to cut through, is what you're saying.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And one knob that they have on a lot of Rivera amps that I like is the focus knob, you know, because it focuses to me, and it helps the sound focus to more of a point that hits you instead of just being too broad and everything and getting lost in the mix, you know. So what I like is the ability to cut through when you want it to cut through.
Has your tone changed over the years? Have you been more of like a super clean, lots of headroom, to now you like some breakup, or have you always been?
Well, one thing about for instance, the Helicasters that we all had in common is our belief that if you want to have a great sound on stage, you got to start with clean first, you know, and that means you've got to have headroom. So, for instance, if you want to play at 20 watts, you don't want to get an amp that's 20 watts. You want to get an amp that's 40 or 50 watts, because you want to be in the sweet spot, and the sweet spot's going to be from 1 to 10. It's going to be kind of in the 3 to 4 area, and that's where after that you start getting more distortion as you get to 4, past 4 and 5. You know, for every watt you're turning up, you're increasing distortion by 5 or 10% a little bit, and that kind of adds up. So the thing we all have in common too is we like to use pedals. We like to use distortion pedals to get our distortion, and sometimes I'll use the amp distortion on a Rivera, but more often than not, I'll use a pedal, like a tube screamer type thing, because then your distortion it's not getting lost in the mix, so to speak, and it's punchier at that point. It's pointing out more, and cutting through. Because when you're up there, when you're playing by yourself in your bedroom, you're going to get a certain sound, and you say, "Oh yeah, man, that's really cool." But then the real test is when you get on stage with a drummer and a bass player and some other instruments. And the real test is, try being on stage with John Jorgensen and Jerry Donahue,
Sure.
On each side of you, and trying to cut through. And if you don't have an amp that'll cut through, you're always back there.
You're lost.
Playing,
in the mix.
you're lost. You're playing closer to your amp instead of interacting with the performers because you can't hear yourself.
Right. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
So that actually brings up a good point to educate the listener. There's two schools of thought. Either get a low wattage amp so you can break it up quicker, so get your little 15 to 18 watt amp,
Mm-hmm.
or get a more powerful amp and be in that sweet spot. Would you say that for the bedroom and small gigs without a drummer, maybe the 18 watt makes sense, but once you have a drummer, that's where you can get lost?
I'm a believer that you have to have more than those two types of amps. I believe that, for instance, like I like to have a very small amp, like a 2 to 5 watt amp, like a microcube or
Sure.
something like that, for bedroom type playing, because that I don't like to be real loud in the bedroom,
Right.
that kind of playing. But in the studio, you need something that's kind of in the 5 to 18 watt range. I would say that's a good size amp to have for that. And then for small clubs, I would get something that's kind of in the 20 to 30 watt
Like the
range.
Venus 6, 35 watts,
Yeah,
let's say?
but the Venus 6 is even louder than that,
Mhm.
because it's Class A,
Sure. Right.
Class A is going to sound louder than non-Class A,
That's true.
and if you don't believe me, get a 30 watt transistor, or solid state amp or something, and then put it up against like a Venus 6 or a Matchless or something, and hear the difference. It's like they'll just blow away that
yeah.
other amp,
Absolutely.
because that other amp is it's straining after about really 10 or 15 watts. It is just straining, whereas the Class A's, they have more oomph. They have more oomph than also the Class AB
Sure.
type amps, in my opinion.
Sure. Great. Well, thank you very much for doing the demo.
My pleasure. And I gotta say, I think just between you and me, that the Venus 6 is like the best amp Rivera's ever come out with, and it just smokes everybody else's amps.
We didn't pay him to say that either.